In this video, I'm going to show you how to add a roof to your cabin. The techniques that I'm going to show you will work on any structure that we build for this class. However, I'm going to specifically use the cabin because it gives us multiple different exterior walls, not just a simple square box. So when I click on the roof tool, it's going to ask me, would you like to put the roof on the level named roof? Probably a good place for it to go, so I'm going to say yes. I'm then going to get this where I can now select boundary walls. Now, could I draw a boundary? Yes, I could. But I'm going to actually create it with an offset or an overhang. The overhang is so that water, as it melts from like snow or something, doesn't run down the sides of the walls. It goes off on an overhang. In Colorado, building code specifies that overhang should be 2 feet or longer. So we're going to go ahead and put in 2 feet. I'm also going to pick a roof type because of snow load again in Colorado. 12-inch rafters would be what we would want. So after I've picked both of those, I'm now going to choose the boundary lines by clicking on the outsides of the wall so I get the pink line outward. It's going to make its connections, and even as I click these small walls here, it's going to connect it so I get an overall shape. Once I get a closed shape, this should establish my roof. I'm going to click the green check mark. It's going to ask me if I want to extend these exterior walls up to meet the roof. Yes, I do, because they need to hold that roof up. Once I do that, I can look at my 3D view. This is the roof that I've created. It is what's called a hip style roof. You'll notice it slopes towards the walls in all directions. This is a very complicated roof to build because of the compound angles, or angles in multiple directions. This is not very likely for what somebody would build on a cabin. They're more likely to use what's called a Gable style roof. This is where the walls will come up in triangle shapes at ports of it, and then we will slope only in a single direction, not in compound directions. So what I can do is I can either click on the roof and delete it, or I could have hit undo. I'm going to go ahead and have deleted the roof and come back to the floor plan. As I click the roof tool now, I will again put it on the roof. I have my walls here, and I'm going to point out something we didn't point out before. There's a little checkbox right here that says defines slope. So what I'm doing first is I'm choosing the walls that my roof slopes towards. This would be the side, if you want to think about it visually, the side where I would attach a gutter, because water is going to run down this direction. I'm going to pick only my vertical walls this time. I'm going to pick this one and this one. Sorry, I accidentally picked one. That I will select that boundary and click delete. Go back to boundary line, go back to pick walls. Pick this one. Pick this short one here. Those are all my vertical ones. I'm now going to come over here and uncheck define slope. Then I'll click the top here. You'll notice it does blend the corners. You'll also notice that it does not have the angle symbol next to it. This is how you can keep track of which roof sections are going to have the gable and which ones are going to be sloped. I'm also going to pick the front edge as well as this short one here to complete my section. As you can see in this example, I only have it sloping in directions that run parallel with each other. That's going to be very important. I'm going to go ahead and click the check mark. It's going to again ask me if I want to attach my walls to the roof. Again, great idea. Floating roofs are not real helpful. Now when I look at it three-dimensionally, you'll notice I have much more of a correct style of roof. This is the style of roof that I would see. However, there are a couple problems. As I orbit around, you might notice that there's a gap right here. Because if you think about our original floor plan, I don't have exterior wall that comes over this area for them to have extended up to fill this gap. This is actually an easy problem to solve. In my floor plan, I am going to add a wall. If you don't remember what type of exterior wall you used, you can click on any exterior wall and it'll remind you. In this case, I used wood siding on wood studs. Now when I click the wall tool, it still goes back to whatever I used last. In my case, it was an interior wall. But I just double checked and I want to make sure I go back to get wood siding on wood studs so it matches. I know that I am drawing finished face interior, which is fine. I'm going to get right on this corner, and just by looking at my house, I don't need to draw all the way over, but I'm going to draw most of the way over so I make sure I get it to extend all the way up. I'm going to go ahead and hit escape. Now, I know because I'm looking at this in the fine one that my outside, this thicker line, is pointed the wrong direction. So I'm going to click on it and flip it this way. So I have it there. The other thing I know is I just now blew an exterior wall through this room that doesn't have one. I don't need it to come all the way down to the floor. I need it to start above the ceiling and go upward to fill the gap in the hole. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to offset the base to 9 feet. This will put it above the ceiling, but not above where the exterior walls end. So it'll be in a great starting place for me. And it will be unconnected 10 feet tall. Once I do that, you might notice that it disappears from view, which is just fine, because if I now zoom out and go over to 3D view, you'll notice I now have a chunk of exterior wall right here. This is what I just drew, kind of floating in the middle of nowhere. The problem with this is on the top, it's not attached to anything. So I am going to click on that, click attach to top, and then I'm going to click on the roof. And that'll basically trim off the excess that I didn't need. You'll also notice there's a slight error also in that this little chunk of wall pops up and this little section of the roof does not go all the way back and meet this wall surface. So basically, as water went to run off the roof in this direction, it's going to now fall into a gap there. A gap I don't want, because it would also then run down and get held up by the edge of this wall. So here's what I'm going to do to fix that. I'm going to use basically a very similar tool. So if I click on the roof section here, I've got this little tool right here. It says join unjoin roof. I'm going to click this. And now what I need to do is I actually need to click on an edge that's part of the surface I want to extend. This top edge works really well right there. Now I was already hovering over it and it wanted to extend it to meet that exterior wall, and that is what I want. So I'm going to click on that as my second click. And you will notice once I've done that, first off, my roof is now complete in that the house is totally covered. Additionally, this now goes underneath this area above it. If you actually see what we might call a double gable that meets like this, this is how it will be, because water can run off the side, run onto this roof, and then it would run down, and this would have a gutter and a downspout in it to pull it out. We're not adding gutters and downspouts to our roof, but this is the way that you would add a gabled roof to your cabin. Now, based on the fact that we all have different shaped cabins, you might have to do more or less of that adjustment than I did. Feel free to attempt both roof types on there to get a feeling of how both of them work. But then double check your assignment for the requirements of what type of roof that you would need for this assignment.